My selfish father refused to help with my education because I wasn't like his ideal son. Now, he's the one who needs me. My father once told me I didn't deserve financial help for school because I wasn't like his golden boy, and now, when he needs support, I gave him exactly what he earned. I'm 32 years old today, and I have a younger brother who's 27. Most of our upbringing was handled by our mom since, truthfully, our dad was hardly ever around. When I was growing up, he always seemed to be caught up in important work stuff, which in hindsight just meant he prioritized his career over us. I barely recall him being home, and even when he was, it was only occasionally on the weekends, never for anything like quality bonding time. He missed out on everything that made up my childhood, my first little league game, school recognitions, even the emergency room trip when I broke my arm. Mom was the one who handled it all. Then, when my brother was born, it was like a switch flipped. Suddenly, Dad was super involved, always showing up to his school functions, sports matches, and even little things like Cub Scouts meetings. The same man, who never seemed to have time for me, suddenly transformed into this hands-on, picture-perfect father for my brother. He'd get all into pep talks, play catch in the yard, and give advice before games, all the things I'd wished he'd done with me. I don't hold any resentment toward my brother. It wasn't his fault he got treated like the golden child, but I won't pretend it didn't mess with my head. I had spent years quietly hoping my dad would pay me some attention, and here was my brother getting it all without even asking for it. Dad treated me like I was some random kid. While around my brother, he lit up like he saw his own reflection. And it wasn't just me who noticed it. Our mom saw it too. She always tried her best to keep things fair. If anything, she made a deliberate effort to make sure I felt seen, since she could tell Dad focused more on my brother. We'd share quiet moments, reading together, cooking, doing puzzles. Simple things, but they meant the world to me. She used to remind me, you don't need to be like your dad to be special. And I clung to those words. I needed that encouragement, especially when it seemed like Dad was constantly disappointed that I wasn't into stereotypical guy stuff. As I grew up, I gave up on trying to win his approval. I did try now and then to connect with him, offering glimpses into my world, hoping he might find something we could relate on. But he'd just look at me like I was an unsolvable riddle. Eventually, I gave up trying. I figured if he actually wanted a relationship, he'd make the effort himself. Spoiler alert, he never did. My brother, though, was the total opposite of me. He was exactly the kind of son my dad had always imagined, loved sports, wasn't afraid to get dirty, and had the same stubbornness Dad admired. I think Dad was thrilled that he saw so much of himself in my brother. They'd spend hours doing who knows what, fishing, camping, tossing the ball in the yard. Meanwhile, I'd be inside, usually in my room, either reading or messing with the computer. That's how it always was. Them outside bonding over sports, while I stayed in with my books or worked on a random project. Dad would walk in, see me glued to a screen or deep in a novel, and shake his head. I could almost hear the thought, why couldn't my other son be more like this one? He never said it outright, but he didn't have to. It was in every glance, every sigh, every time he told my brother he was proud, but barely even acknowledged me. To be honest, I think part of him never really saw me as his kid. I was Mom's son, and my brother was his. Maybe it's because she was the one who showed up for me. School plays, doctor visits, helping with homework, she did it all. When Dad was actually home, he just stayed in his own world. Occasionally, he'd toss out some generic fatherly advice, but it didn't mean much because he didn't really know who I was. Half the time, he didn't seem to want to. The rest of the time, he was too caught up with my brother to even notice I existed. As my brother got older and joined all sorts of sports teams, Dad made it his mission to be his coach, his cheerleader, his manager, everything. They'd come home pumped after games, recounting my brother's touchdowns or how he'd been named MVP. I'd sit there quietly, nodding along, pretending I was part of the conversation, while Dad would go on and on without even glancing my way. I wasn't expecting applause or anything. I just wished he'd at least ask how my day was. I always held out hope that maybe as I grew older, things would shift. Maybe Dad would realize that I didn't need to be a carbon copy of him to be worth something. But instead, I'd get comments like, a real man knows how to get his hands dirty, or, why don't you try joining a team? And every time, I'd feel this sinking mix of anger and sadness, like I would never measure up in his eyes. Mom, though, was the complete opposite. She'd ask me about my books, sit beside me while I tinkered with little gadgets or computer stuff, and really listen. She'd tell me she was proud of me, and honestly, that's all I needed. Looking back now, I realized she was trying to make up for both parents. She knew Dad wasn't going to step in, so she did everything she could to make sure I didn't feel like I had to change who I was to be valuable. If it wasn't for her, I don't think I would have had the confidence to chase my dreams at all. But then everything fell apart when I lost her. I was just 13 when my mom passed away, and suddenly the only person who truly understood me was gone. From that point on, everything changed for the worse. It felt like Dad doubled down on his involvement with my brother, if that was even possible, and I faded even further into the background. I tried to keep myself together, to find a way to connect with my dad in her absence, but every attempt felt like I was only reminding him of everything he didn't care for. Growing up like that wasn't just tough, it was isolating. Watching Dad and my brother become this close-knit team only made the distance between me and them feel more permanent. Some people say that favoritism is just part of family life, that every parent has a favorite. But unless you've been the kid who's clearly not it, you don't understand how deeply that can cut. I wasn't asking for anything huge, just a sense that I belonged, that I mattered to him. My brother was too young back then to realize what was happening, and even now I doubt he fully sees how things really were. None of it was his fault, and I don't blame him for it, but that doesn't erase the damage it left behind. Losing Mom was like losing the anchor that kept my life steady. I was barely a teenager, still trying to figure out who I was, and the one person who truly saw me was just gone. My whole world dimmed after that. Without her, I felt invisible, like nobody in the house really saw me at all. She had been the one to lift me up, to tell me I was capable and special in my own way. After she died, the house changed. You'd expect that kind of loss to bring a family together, for people to rely on one another for strength. But that didn't happen, not even close. Dad and my brother kept moving forward like nothing significant had happened, like we hadn't just lost the glue that held us together. I was heartbroken, struggling just to get through each day, while they acted like life was going on as usual. If anything, Dad just poured even more attention into my brother. It was like I was a background character in their story. I remember one particular afternoon, maybe a few months after Mom's funeral. I had a rough day, classmates giving me awkward sympathy, teachers treating me like I was fragile. All I wanted was to go home and feel like someone still cared. But when I walked through the door, there was Dad sitting with my brother, laughing at the TV like everything was fine. It felt like I was a ghost in my own home. After that, I started spending most of my time in my room. It just hurt too much to be around them. Even in the kitchen, grabbing a snack, I'd hear them talking about my brother's latest game or something else they'd done together. I'd try to join the conversation sometimes, only to get a glance from Dad that said, "Why are you interrupting?" Eventually, I just stopped trying. With Mom gone, I didn't know who I could talk to. I was desperate for someone to hear me out, to help me deal with everything, but there was no one. Dad was too caught up in playing coach, and my brother, still a kid, didn't realize how different things were for me. So I leaned into the one thing that gave me a sense of purpose: technology. Coding started as a way to distract myself, something to keep my mind busy. But the deeper I got into it, the more I discovered that I was actually good at it. I'd spend hours learning, building things from scratch, just to feel that little spark of accomplishment. That became my thing, something no one could take from me. But of course, Dad didn't see it that way. To him, I was just wasting my time on a screen. He'd make sarcastic remarks whenever he saw me at my computer. Stuff like, "When are you going to do something real?" Or, "A real man doesn't hide behind a keyboard." I'd just shrug and keep typing. By then, I knew there was no point trying to explain. If he didn't understand it, then in his mind, it wasn't worth anything. One day stands out clearly. I'd spent weeks working on this simple program. Nothing too crazy, but a pretty cool tool for someone my age. I finally got it working and was proud of it. And even though I knew better, I wanted to show someone. So I went to Dad, showed him what I'd made, walked him through it, hoping he'd at least acknowledge how hard I'd worked. He barely glanced at it and said, "Yeah, that's nice," before turning back to what he was doing. That was the moment I realized. It didn't matter what I did. He was never going to see me the way he saw my brother. From that day forward, I stopped seeking his approval. I buried myself in my work, focusing on coding and small tech jobs to earn some money, fixing computers, making simple websites, helping neighbors troubleshoot problems. It wasn't much, but it felt like progress. I didn't need Dad's validation. I was finding my own way. Meanwhile, my brother continued to shine under Dad's watchful eye. Football star, family favorite, getting praise at every turn. Meanwhile, I'd get the usual, "Still doing that computer thing?" and a half-hearted smile. I just nodded, knowing there was no use trying to explain why it mattered. And yeah, I know how it sounds. Maybe even a little bitter. But when you're a teenager trying to carve out your identity and your own family doesn't take your dreams seriously, it sticks with you. It makes you question yourself. But I kept going because deep down, I needed to prove to myself that I could make something out of the path I'd chosen. So I kept grinding. While they were out at games, I was in my room, building projects, learning code. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me direction. I had something that made me feel in control, and little by little, it paid off. By the end of high school, I knew I wanted to pursue a career in tech. I had a growing portfolio, small projects under my belt, and real goals. College was the next step, and I went big, applying to the top schools for computer science. I even landed a summer internship at a local startup before my first semester. It finally felt like things were coming together. But of course, things got complicated again. Despite not showing much interest before, my dad wasn't exactly thrilled when I asked for help with college. I had some scholarships, but tuition was still expensive. So I sat him down, explained my plan, showed him everything I'd accomplished, and asked for support. He listened, barely. Then he hit me with, "I just don't think it's smart to spend that kind of money on something so uncertain." He called it unrealistic, questioned job stability, and basically dismissed all the work I'd done. Meanwhile, my brother had never had to ask twice for money for football camps or gear. I reminded him I had scholarships, that I'd landed an internship, but he brushed it off. "Your brother's grades are slipping. He needs help right now. You'll have to figure it out on your own." That crushed me. It wasn't just about the money, it was that he still couldn't see what I was building for myself. So I left. I packed my things and went to my aunt, my mom's sister. She didn't have much, but she gave me a room and listened. I told her everything, and she didn't hesitate to step in. She offered to help cover my college costs. She didn't have the means, but she asked friends, scraped together support, and somehow made it happen. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. I'll never forget sitting in her kitchen, looking at checks from people who barely knew me, but believed in me more than my own father. That moment changed everything. I swore I'd make it count. I started college, studied hard, and absorbed every bit of knowledge I could. I kept working on the side, freelancing, building my skills. I even began developing my own app on the side. It became my focus, my dream. Balancing school, projects, and part-time work wasn't easy, but I didn't care. Every all-nighter, every small success, it felt like proof I could make it. My aunt stayed my biggest supporter, even when she didn't fully understand what I was doing. She'd ask questions, cheer me on, and just being in my corner made all the difference. In the end, this journey made me stronger. I stopped expecting anything from my father or brother. They'd never be the kind of family I could lean on. And that realization hurt. But it also pushed me harder. Eventually, I started paying my aunt back. Not because she asked, but because I had to. She gave me a shot when no one else would. By the time I neared graduation, I had a working prototype of my app and a portfolio that showed what I could really do. I didn't talk about it much. I wasn't looking for praise anymore. I just wanted to prove that I was worth believing in, that I mattered. And maybe, deep down, I wanted to prove to my dad that he'd been wrong all along. So here I am, the same kid he once said didn't deserve an investment, building a future on my own terms. Not because of my family, but in spite of them. And somehow that makes the success feel even better. If you enjoyed this story and felt the emotions behind it, don't forget to give it a like, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences and heartfelt stories. Your support means the world, and it helps us bring more content like this to you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.